Welcome to Global West. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a stunning escalation that has caught both industries and governments off guard, Canada has officially halted all softwood lumber exports to the United States as of September 2025. This unprecedented move comes after months of rising tensions and failed negotiations between the two countries. The decision is a direct and forceful retaliation for the United States, imposing new, higher tariffs on Canadian lumber. It marks the most significant disruption to the North American lumber market in decades, with immediate and far-reaching consequences for both nations. The once steady flow of timber, a cornerstone of cross-border trade and a vital supply chain for both economies, has been abruptly severed. The shockwaves are being felt from rural logging towns in Canada to bustling construction sites across the U.S. The United States relies heavily on Canadian lumber for home construction, renovation, and infrastructure projects. At the same time, Canada depends on the vast American market to sustain its forest products industry and support thousands of jobs. Now, builders, developers, and policymakers on both sides of the border are scrambling to fill a sudden massive supply gap. The uncertainty is fueling anxiety in boardrooms and on job sites alike. For American home builders, this means soaring costs, project delays, and a scramble to find alternative suppliers. For Canadian lumber towns, it's a painful but, in the eyes of many, necessary stand to defend their industry and livelihoods. Economists warn that the economic pain is likely to intensify as the standoff drags on, with ripple effects spreading through related industries, from real estate to retail. For now, the North American lumber tap is firmly off. As uncertainty looms, no one can say when or if the flow of timber between these two neighbors will resume. At the heart of the dispute between the United States and Canada lies a fundamental difference in how each country manages its vast forests and timber resources. This difference has shaped not only their respective lumber industries, but also the economic relationship between the two neighbors for decades. In Canada, forests are largely owned and managed by provincial governments, who lease the rights to harvest timber to companies. These leases often come with strict regulations on sustainability and reforestation, but the key point is that the government sets the price for timber rather than the open market. By contrast, in the United States, most timberland is privately owned. Here, prices for timber are determined by supply and demand, with private landowners negotiating directly with logging companies. This market-driven approach is seen as more transparent by American producers. U.S. lumber producers argue that Canada's system amounts to an unfair subsidy, since government-set prices are often lower than what the market would dictate. They claim this gives Canadian lumber an artificial advantage in the U.S. market, undercutting American companies. The U.S. Lumber Coalition, representing American producers, has long lobbied for tariffs on Canadian lumber imports. They insist that tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and ensure fair competition, especially for small and family-owned mills. Recent tariff hikes, now as high as 16.82%, have put immense pressure on Canadian lumber companies. Many have been forced to scale back production, lay off workers, or even shut down entirely, as exporting to the U.S. becomes financially unviable. Canadian officials strongly deny any unfair advantage, pointing to international trade rulings that have repeatedly sided with Canada. They argue their system is transparent and that U.S. claims are exaggerated. Despite these rulings, the U.S. has continued to impose tariffs, leading to a cycle of legal battles, appeals, and retaliatory measures. Each side accuses the other of protectionism, deepening mistrust and making compromise difficult. This deep divide over forest management philosophies and trade principles has fractured what was once a vital economic partnership, straining not just the lumber industry, but broader U.S.-Canada relations. As tariffs continued to rise, Canada was eventually pushed to halt its lumber exports to the U.S., a drastic move that sent shockwaves through both economies and left many workers in limbo. The result is a full-blown trade war, with no easy solution in sight. Both countries now face economic uncertainty, and the future of cross-border lumber trade hangs in the balance. The U.S. housing market is reeling from the sudden loss of Canadian lumber, which supplied about 30% of its needs. Prices for wood have skyrocketed, making it nearly impossible for builders to budget or complete projects. The cost of a new home is soaring, pushing homeownership further out of reach for many Americans. Renovations and repairs are also more expensive, impacting existing homeowners. Builders locked into fixed-price contracts now face financial ruin, with some projects canceled or delayed, The ripple effect threatens jobs across the construction sector from tradespeople to suppliers. Economists warn that lumber price volatility is fueling inflation and could slow overall economic growth. What began as a trade dispute now threatens the entire U.S. housing market. The ongoing lumber dispute has created a deep rift between two of America's most influential industries, home builders and lumber producers. Both sides are powerful, and both have a lot at stake as the debate over tariffs and trade policy intensifies. Home builders, represented by the National Association of Home Builders, argue that Canadian lumber is absolutely essential for keeping construction costs down. They warn that tariffs on Canadian imports are disastrous for housing affordability, making it harder for millions of Americans to buy or build a home. Builders say U.S. mills simply can't keep up with the nation's demand for lumber, especially as housing needs surge. They see tariffs as nothing more than a hidden tax on American families, driving up prices and putting the dream of homeownership out of reach for many. On the other side, the U.S. Lumber Coalition insists that tariffs are necessary to level the playing field. They argue that Canadian lumber benefits from unfair government subsidies and that tariffs are crucial to protect American jobs and the long-term health of the domestic lumber industry. Lumber producers claim that with tariffs in place, domestic mills will be able to ramp up production, invest in new equipment, and hire more workers. They downplay the impact on home prices, saying the real issue is ensuring a strong, self-sufficient American industry. Both sides are lobbying hard in Washington, each presenting their case to lawmakers and the public. Policymakers find themselves caught in the crossfire, forced to choose between supporting affordable housing and defending American manufacturing jobs. For home builders, the export halt and tariffs are a nightmare scenario, threatening to stall projects and increase costs. But for lumber producers, these measures are seen as a necessary stand to ensure their survival and future growth. The result is a widening political and economic chasm, with both sides digging in and little sign of compromise on the horizon. The debate has become a symbol of broader tensions in U.S. trade policy. Meanwhile, millions of American families are caught in the middle, waiting for relief as the standoff drags on. Many are left wondering when, or if, they'll be able to afford a new home. The stakes for both industries and for the broader U.S. economy are enormous, with ripple effects that could last for years to come. For Canada's lumber industry, halting exports is a desperate, high-risk move. The U.S. is its main market. Shutting the tap inflicts immediate pain on sawmills and workers, especially in rural towns. Many mills face layoffs or closure, threatening the livelihoods of thousands. The industry was already struggling under rising U.S. tariffs, which eroded profits and discouraged investment. Now, entire communities face uncertainty as the local mill, their economic lifeline, shuts down. Canadian companies are scrambling to find new markets in Asia and Europe, but these can't replace the U.S. overnight. The fight against tariffs, meant to secure the industry's future, is causing immediate hardship. The hope short-term pain will force a long-term solution. But for now, the future of Canada's lumber towns hangs in the balance. The gamble is enormous, and the outcome uncertain. As of September 2025, the standoff continues with no formal negotiations in sight. Both governments say they're open to talks, but neither will budge on core demands. The U.S. is reviewing Canadian subsidies again, with the possibility of even higher tariffs looming. A separate national security investigation could trigger even broader restrictions on Canadian lumber. Each new review adds complexity and hardens positions. Several scenarios are possible: a new managed trade deal, a prolonged export halt, or years of legal battles. The most optimistic outcome is a new softwood lumber agreement to restore stability. The most pessimistic, months of economic pain until one side gives in. For now, the future of North American lumber trade is uncertain and fraught with risk. The next move could reshape the industry for years to come. The only way out is through compromise, a new managed trade deal that balances both countries' interests. Such an agreement would replace tariffs with quotas or export taxes, stabilizing prices and ensuring market access. Negotiating this is a monumental challenge, requiring political will and consensus on both sides. If talks fail, the dispute will drag on in international courts, a process that could take years. Even a legal win for Canada may not end the tariffs quickly, risking further retaliation. Meanwhile, workers, industries, and consumers in both countries suffer as costs rise and jobs disappear. The pressure to resolve the crisis will only grow as the economic pain deepens. Dialogue and compromise are the only viable path forward. Without it, both nations face a prolonged trade war and a fractured partnership.